Hey guys, it is a Wrestling Mayhem Show special edition, broadcasting on Wrestling Mayhem Show and of course over on the indie wrestling .us platforms as well. Glad to have you all with us. Tonight it's all about the Von Erichs, and we have in studio my good longtime friend, voice of MLW in the English feed over on AAA. It's Joe Dombrowski.
Good morning, Vietnam.
No. That's another thing. We're not doing that one. No.
Sorry.
That's all right. It's all right.
Good afternoon, evening, and good night, Sorg Universe.
Close enough. So, but no, we I've been authoring DVDs. You got this project coming up, so we always like to touch base when you do have a new project. A lot of times, we do see over at indiewrestling.us and everything, and we've been good partners over the years for this kind of stuff. And of course, the Von Erichs, everybody's looking at them these days. Iron Claw last month. Well, first of all, I guess we should ask, did you watch the Iron Claw?
I saw the Iron Claw a day after it was released.
Okay.
I was very much looking forward to that. And as a historian, a wrestling nerd, whatever you want to say, I really appreciated a lot of attention to detail from something as simple as the match graphics of the day, or the names of actual wrestlers that were on the pay sheets, or if we're going to name drop Sam Mushnick or Jerry Jarrett or somebody like that. Very time appropriate. I think the most important thing for anybody watching this movie is to remember that it's not a wrestling movie and it's not a documentary. Mm-hmm. It is a story about family. It is a story about overcoming adversity and tragedy, and wrestling happens to be the backdrop. Mm-hmm. So I'm not one of the folks that says, "Oh, this was out of order and this wasn't chronologically correct."
And a brother is missing.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing with that. If I was making that movie, Chris would be in the movie. Mm-hmm. Because you can't say, on one hand, the movie can't handle a certain amount of tragedies, but then you want to make it about the Von Erichs who had a certain number of tragedies.
Yes.
I think inserting Chris as an ancillary character to at least get across the fact he idolized his brothers, he wanted to be like his brothers, just as simple as having a little kid come into some of the family scenes and saying, "Wow, David, I want to be like you one day," and then having, Fritz say, "Oh, go take your asthma medicine, you're too short," or whatever. Just something to establish the fact he wants it, but life circumstances aren't letting it happen.
Well, you fill in for you, and I think there's a lot of people that maybe check the Iron Claw. I don't know the full history of the Von Erichs. I know there's a lot of tragedy. I grew up, watching the Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich in WWF. So what is, if you're just like, hey, I've heard of the Von Erichs, let's go see this. I don't know the Von Erichs are on AEW. Let's see this movie. MJF's in it. What is that missing piece of Chris from this movie?
Well, Chris was the youngest of the brothers. He passed away at age 21 in 1991 when he took his own life. And Chris was asthmatic. Mm-hmm. And he grew up taking medication for that, which stunted his growth and made his bones very brittle. So even though he diligently worked out, and in the match that he's in, you'll see on the Von Erich Dynasty, for his frame, He's very well put together. He's in great shape. He's got good muscle on him. But the problem is it's 1990 and he's maybe 5'5", 170 pounds. His bones are very brittle. So one of his first matches, he breaks his arm, and that was a major setback. So Chris wanted it very badly, but just genetics and nature just weren't going to allow it to happen. And the running theme, with Mike and with all of the brothers of having this Von Erich weight on their shoulders to carry this family name. Chris, the heart wanted it, but the rest of him, it just wasn't going to happen, and unfortunately he took his own life. But I think you could have included that in the movie. I understand not including certain other things. Kerry did not do the motorcycle accident after winning the NWA World title. That was 2 years later. Mm-hmm. But I get that because you're not going to stop the movie to explain NWA promoter politics and boardroom meetings. You're not going to say, like, oh, here's the syndication market map of 1982. You're just going to say, hey, we can get on ESPN, and people get that.
This is something that density of content wise, they could have very well made this like an 8-part miniseries on HBO or something.
100%. And
Yeah.
I think the proper home to really flesh out the story would have been an HBO Max or Netflix or something like
Sure.
that. Because there was a point in the movie where I felt like the tragedies, the timeline was a little bit unclear, where you couldn't tell if this happens a week apart or a year apart. And even just as simple as a 2 years later, lower third or something like that, may have made that a little bit less jarring for both people that did and didn't come in understanding the story. But for all it's worth, I give high marks to the movie. I've heard from friends of friends that have really no connection to wrestling who wound up, or people in wrestling that just didn't know the story, who come away thinking, oh, that was so sad, and I feel so bad for Kevin, and this, that, and the other thing. So the film did its job. We can nitpick, but overall, I think if you're a fan of wrestling or a fan of just these based on true life, overcoming the odds type of stories, you should check it out.
I saw it. I think the first weekend it was out. When I had the first chance. And it was Christmas Eve, I remember. Great thing to go into the family holidays, which was when it was released that weekend, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I remember seeing a group of people, kind of gathering around talking about the movie in a way that I don't see much outside of like Marvel movies. Again with different contexts and talking about it was like, oh, I knew they had some tragedy, but I didn't realize it was that bad, that kind of thing. And they looked like they were, that age group that, a little older than us that maybe like grew up watching some of the Von Erichs and some of that stuff, right? So I thought that was really fascinating to see those reactions. And of course, I've seen, I don't know how many people in the wrestling industry that we know locally popping up like that opening night, preview night, or whatever it was, opening weekend and everything. It seems like everybody's like, well, we got to see the wrestling movie. And but no, I think it was a good representation of that. I think this is something that's a lot of people are going to watch when it's on. I don't know. I don't remember who the distributor is on this one, if it's going to be on HBO Max or Peacock or whatever. So I think it's going to get a lot of play there too. So So this leads into, of course, you are, I want to say, an expert in video library. What's the word I'm looking for? You're the wordsmith here on commentary. Not collecting, restoration, and compilation, and a little bit of digging and archaeology, I guess, a little bit. Sometimes
got to get in the nooks and crannies.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, we have a history. We were kind of talking post show last night with Matt Carlins of Summer Studio Wrestling, trying to get some stuff together, which did not go well. I think it's a little bit of a deeper well we need to go in for that. But this is the only project you've, of course, done the Brian Pillman Memorial Series. You've had a few other things over the years as well. The Wrestling from the Heartland with Les Thatcher, of course, which his name popped up on an interview recently, I think with Moxley or somebody. So, so other than the Von Erich, somebody you've been looking at for a while now. How does this come together?
So much of it was timing. I mean, I've always been intrigued by the story. I've always been a fan of the family. Of course, the Von Erich Freebird rivalry. What that family meant to Dallas, Texas, and what Dallas meant to the territory system at that point. I'd worked with Lance and Marshall in Major League Wrestling for a little bit, and they are certainly their father's children. They are the kind of soft-spoken, respectful Southern gentlemen who are incredible athletes and just very personable individuals, and I have nothing but great things to say about them as well.
And these are the same that we're seeing these days on AEW and Ring of Honor.
Exactly, yeah. The Von Erich Dynasty project was a product of time, because the first thing that happened is I started to build a relationship with the Southmar Media Library, which is headed up by Mario Savoldi, which, in my opinion, is the coolest and most expansive professional wrestling library in the world, not owned by a billionaire. So being in relation to Southmar allows a few things to happen. It allows some of my content to be available on their platforms, and allows their content to be available on some of my platforms. And that opens the door to collaborations, to whether it's me doing voice work, whether it's me having an idea and we work together on it, which was basically the Von Erich was our first attempt at doing that. Because when you open that Savoldi door, you open the door to USWA Texas. You open the door to ICW, which became IWCCW. You open the door to Global Wrestling Federation. You open the door to a lot of libraries that are not on Peacock and are not on any high-priced app or high, billion-dollar investment app these days. But there's so much content there as far as hidden gems or lost to time or, so many names. I mean, you look at the fact that I had tweeted out the screenshot of Kevin Von Erich versus Taz. And I asked Taz if he had any memories of it, and Taz said, yeah, I got a memory. It was horrible. And I respect that's Taz's opinion. And I think Taz, being a harsh critic of probably himself and others, probably made him as good as he was, and it still is as a commentator. So I don't fault him for that opinion at all, certainly. But I looked at it as the fact that you're not getting, Jack Briscoe and Dory Funk Jr. You're not going to get 6 or 7 stars in the Tokyo Dome. But the sheer rareness, the fact that no one's seen this match in 33 years. And it's not Taz, it's the Tasmaniac with the bare feet and the face paint. And
I love like going through that match list. I'm like, Tasmaniac, because I forgot about the exchange was like about a month ago. And I'm like going through that list and I'm just like, Tasmaniac? Like, what?
And I checked my tweet a couple days later, and because of Taz and because of the fact some news sites picked up on it, now my view count is 500,000. So the fact that these things are out there and people don't know, Kerry teamed with Jeff Jarrett. Chris wrestled Steve Austin. Kerry wrestled a masked future Undertaker. All of these names that came through, Harley Race and Ric Flair as world champions. People don't know that happened because maybe it doesn't fit in the narrative of other wrestling companies and what they're able to sell you and they're able to show you. But we're able to do that here. And what was most important to me about doing an 8-hour, 3-disc anthology of the Von Erichs is every other Von Erich story focuses on the tragedies, and understandably so, because those are emotionally gripping, and they're obviously what the family is most known for in the mainstream, and one of the reasons that name lives on, because that story is unlike any other. But unfortunately, I think sometimes a shadow gets cast over how many good things they did. The fact these were young kids in their early 20s who were literally building a territory on their backs. Nobody went to Dallas to make money. Mm-hmm. You went to Dallas because it was a gig. Mm-hmm. But nobody was like, man, Dallas is red hot. You got to head down there. Until the Von Erichs and the Freebirds and Chris Adams and Gino Hernandez and all of these young guys. And something you can appreciate is that Dallas was such a innovator in production and technology, because they were the first place doing 4 and 6 camera shoots.
That's right.
They were the first place doing instant replay. They were the first place putting boom mics in the ring. Mm-hmm. And that was Mickey Grant, and that was Bill Mercer, the play-by-play guy, who comes from legitimate journalism. Bill Mercer was the very first person to tell Lee Harvey Oswald he was being charged with the murder of President Kennedy. And there's footage of that on YouTube. So you have best of the best, one of the best voices, one of the best production people. Fritz is the promoter, his kids, and you may want to cry nepotism today, but back then the promoters enhanced their kids because they weren't ever going to leave the territory. They were going to stay loyal. Nobody else you could necessarily say that about. But, I mean, you think David was 25 when he passed, so he's 22, 23, 24 and being pegged for the world title. That's huge. How many people today, even in the 40 years since then, have been that age pegged for the world title? 1 or 2? Those deserve to be celebrated. The fact that David can share a ring with Harley Race, Kerry can share a ring with Ric Flair, Freebirds, all the other ones, and we can take you back in time and show you why people were so encapsulated with this family to begin with, and celebrate those triumphs as opposed to just the tragedies.
You're right. You talk about those bigger platforms, like WWE does have the WCCW catalog, and I think it's probably available on Network and Peacock. They probably have some of that up there. But like the biggest thing that they've done with it was the tragedy documentary that they did, which was an interesting story to learn about that. But still, like that's that's all you have, you know.
Yeah, and that goes up to Peacock up to October 28th, 1988, when at that point the Von Erichs had sold to Jerry Jarrett, which now switches to USWA, which switches to Savoli Library. So now we pick up where that left off, and now here's Kerry versus Sid Vicious, here's Kevin versus Great Muta, all this stuff that the territory was down. It wasn't the same, and people don't know what happened, but now we can bring it to you, and it's kind of a mind F moment where it's like, I didn't even know this guy was there.
We're here. We're on the video version of this, Percy Pringle, known as Paul Bearer.
Yes.
And an early Steve Austin.
Probably rookie Steve Austin. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's Chris Von Erich. And you can see, I think if Chris could be teleported to 2024, and he wouldn't have been so injury prone, I think Chris could have a hell of a career.
Absolutely.
Because he doesn't have a bad body, and he was still so green here, but you could see how bad he wants it, and you can see the fans, and you'll be able to hear the fans on this when they come alive for him. But Chris couldn't be taken seriously at his size in that era. This is the era of the Warlord and Andre and guys like that. So they put him in there with Percy Pringle as kind of a manager wrestler versus a wrestler and Chris at that point. But we don't talk. I don't want to harp on the fact that Chris took his own life. I want to celebrate the fact that if Chris could know today that his name is part of that family legacy, that he's in the WWE Hall of Fame, he accomplished his dream and his goal because he, in history now, stands alongside his brothers as part of that family legacy. And I wish there was a way for Chris to know that, but since there's not, we're going to celebrate Chris, and we're going to celebrate all the work that he put in to get to that point.
Absolutely. So it's a great, and again, Von Erichs there more than what's in the movie. You really kind of dig into the history here.
We have 14 on here, I think. I don't even know how we did it.
That's a heck of a Christmas.
We talk about the non-blood Von Erichs, like Waldo and Lance. We talk about Lacey Von Erich. We talk about Holly Von Erich. I didn't even know it was Mark Von Erich until I started doing this thing. Von Erich just came out of the woodwork. But yeah, this is the most comprehensive and complete look at the Von Erich family name as an in-ring career entity that has ever been put together, probably ever will be put together, because I don't know who else could do this.
Other than the number of Von Erichs, what is the biggest surprise you got out of this project and coming through all this footage?
I think the biggest surprise or the coolest learning experience was just kind of tracing some of Kevin's journey up in New York for ICW and IWCCW, and seeing him working in front of a different crowd, not just Taz, but a young Johnny Grunge from Public Enemy on there as well. I didn't know there was a Kerry Von Erich hotline.
It's a chapter marker in this DVD, but
yeah, we have the commercial for the Kerry Von Erich hotline where he leans toward the camera and says, "You can ask me anything." I don't even know how that worked. But honestly, biggest surprise to me was that Muta was there because his name was Super Black Ninja, and he didn't wear the face paint. This is before he went to NWA and started beating up Sting and Ric Flair, but he made a stop in Dallas and had a little run with Kevin.
I love this. We got somebody in the chat over at the Twitch for IndieWrestling.us and says they watched one of the Von Erich family members, Kerry Von Erich, in Problem Child on VHS. I didn't know he was in that movie. I watched that movie all the time when I was a kid.
I completely forgot about that.
I have to go watch Problem Child again.
I think you do.
John Ritter's in that too. That's another great flashback. But Three's Company, baby.
Love that show, man. I'm a big Mr. Furley guy.
Okay, all right. So it's incredible. Of course, it's going to be on Pro Wrestling Library. You can get DVDs, and I know some people like their physical media. That's what we're working on here at the studio.
Joe-Dombrowski.com for DVDs, ProWrestlingLibrary.com for the VOD, and there's also a DVD link there now that we've revamped.
What is I know they're all your favorite children here, but what is your favorite match out of this collection?
I gotta say, Kerry and Ric Flair. just because that was the benchmark at that point. If you could go with the world champion 30, 45, 60 minutes. And it's a match from Hawaii, too.
Is that so? This isn't the one mentioned in the movie.
This is not the one, because the one in the movie you got to watch on Peacock. That's Kerry beating Flair at the David Von Erich Memorial Parade of Champions.
Okay.
And then Flair won the title back 3 weeks later, but that was all Japan Pro Wrestling, so we don't have that. But we do have one of the other matches in Hawaii promoted by The Rock's grandmother, I believe.
As illustrated in Young Rock.
Yeah, so maybe there's a dramatization of that if that ever gets rebooted. But I love that, and I love David versus Harley Race, because those are the two things that solidify how big they were in the business, even with how young they are. Probably the two most respected wrestlers of the day were the two that controlled that world title, and that was Harley and Rick. And if they sold for you, or if they gave you the rub or the nod, you knew you were going places. And when people say if David had lived, he would have been world champion, I think it would have happened probably if the show Kerry won it.
Wow. Well, it's an interesting collection. It's a great project. Thank you for digging in the wrestling dirt for this, to bring out these gems so nobody else has to.
You guys keep watching, and we will keep digging, because there's a lot more stuff I want to get my hands on.
That's right. Don't take that out of context. So thank you, everybody that's been tuning in here for this live chat with Joe Dombrowski. And if it is your first time checking us out, of course, we're part of the Wrestling Mayhem Show. We are live every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We have a lot of fun and try to celebrate professional wrestling with a lot of people that have been fans and found themselves into pro wrestling in interesting ways. And talk with a lot of wrestlers, young talents that you're going to know about very, very soon. And of course, check out indiewrestling.us. A lot of great content there, including live productions and all kinds of stuff. Check out the live event calendar to see what is coming up there and everything at indiewrestling.us. Thank you, Joe, for joining us. ProWrestlingLibrary.com, Joe-Dombrowski.com, and you're on all the social medias.
I'm on the X and the Insta and the Snapchiz and the Tickety Talks and all that stuff.
There's another Joe Dombrowski out there. It's the one that's obviously talking about pro wrestling. And also great clips. You drop the greatest classic clips up from time to time, and it's a treasure on there as well.
I gotta shout out my boy MLJ, who just convinced me to subscribe to a Patreon because he posted a clip of a fan throwing an ear of corn at Earl Hebner during a title match. And I don't know if I can ever top that.
That's a lot to unpack.
It was in Kuwait, too, just to make it weirder.
That's a great sentence right there. So, Joe, always a blast hanging with you. Thank you so much. Can't wait to see what the next project's going to be here.
Pleasure to be here, my friend.
All right. We'll see you guys next time. Mayhem out.
Just wait. Just wait. Just wait. Just wait. Wait for the perfect time, then attack. Don't give up what you want, take it back. Wait for the perfect time, then attack.
This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.